When we look at the universe, we can see that something is happening. The cycles and repetitions, they are there to teach us something about ourselves. The repetition that happens in life is the repetition that happens inside of each and every one of us. That is, it's interesting to think about, my friends, because we are part of something bigger than us. We as individuals, we have the problem of the subjective experience. Directly, we can only experience from our perspective, the individual perspective. But when we look at what we are, we can see ourselves as part of something greater. And that is something to think about. Because what is it to be an agent in such a reality? In this channel, I've talked about the hunter-gatherer several times, because that's a topic I've been studying. But the thing is that when we look at how the lives of those human beings were, we can take three fundaments, three bases, three aspects, and that would be repetition, adaptation, and continuity. That is, first would be the process of repetition. And in repetition happens learning. And the process of learning require everything from the senses. So the brain can have a learning experience. And adaptation would be ourselves changing, transforming into something in order to survive. And continuity would be how nature actually works. When we see water running, when we see life happening, when we see how small ants never stop. It can be a little overwhelming to think like that, but we can do it. And when we look from a different perspective, we can see things more clearly. It is interesting to think about that, because each and every one of us are capable of such thing. That is, when we are dealing with something in our lives, whatever it might be, we can take a step back and look at it from a different perspective. That is interesting, because if each and every one of us regularly did that, the world would be a better place, probably. But the thing is that to understand the logic behind the actions, that's a tricky thing. But maybe that is what should be done by us. So the thing is that the repetition is the law, and we are subjected to that law. But how we deal with that law, that's what is important, my friends. Because, for example, in Japanese culture, repetition is sacred. In Taoism, the same. In many philosophies, the repetition is seen as something very important. But the repetition in the context of change, of transformation. But we also can say that repetition happens in the process of improvement. I'm not going to use evolution, I'm going to use improvement. But because improvement is very important in the process of adaptation. Because the process of improvement would be, for example, to deal with reality in a lighter way, to understand ephemerality and accept it. That is something interesting to think about, my friends, because repetition, whether we want it or not, is really the law of life. But we have to choose what those repetitions will be like. Let me explain better. Through our choices, each and every second, we can have a taste of that. Because whether we want it or not, we are constantly repeating actions, repeating things. We wake up, we live, we sleep, wake up, we live, we sleep again, and then the cycle continues, so on and so on. But how we are aware of that process of repetition is what matters. Because the repetition for me is one of the greatest expressions of the cyclic nature of existence and how the universe works. Through our lives, we have to do that, whether we want it or not. But the thing is that what is really important is the awareness we have, how conscious we are of those repetitions and what they are doing to our lives. That is something to think about, my friends. Because every repetition, every cycle is just a microcosmos of the whole universe happening. After all, everything is Mandala.